So, if you're into 3D, you possibly may have heard about Blender, as it's the most popular open source free 3D tool that you can lay your hands on and start creating. And before now, Blender was this tool that actually looked pretty rugged and didn't really have all of the aesthetics that it currently celebrates. And Blender actually got to the point that it is because of the doggedness of the creator to keep this tool free and continually develop it, the community around it that actually helped make Blender what it is today, and of course the donation that is helping to bring new features and updates to Blender. And today we have something that is pretty similar to that, and that is Albatross 3D. Albatross 3D is a free 3D modeling software which is currently developed by a single author, and this has been in development for a very long time and continually have updates. Albatross 3D currently focuses on a lighter weight, more direct approach to 3D modeling, and because the development is done by one particular person and lacks a lot of visibility, this tool isn't getting to its full potential. And of course, for those who like to take a look at this and possibly you like to work with it, you can simply go over to the link in the description that'll bring you right here where you'll be able to see it. This does come with a couple of nice cool features, and the features include modeling, texturing, animation, asset browser, rendering, export and imports, different platform support which currently is basically Windows and Linux, and of course some other cool stuff to come. And of course, if you'd like to explore this and possibly you'd like to download this, you can click on the download button where you'll be able to download the Albatross 3D 2025.2, which is currently the most recent version that you can get for Windows. For Linux and BOS, this doesn't really have updates to them as much as we have for Windows, and that is quite understandable as this is currently developed by one person and actually needs a lot of support to get this tool to where it's supposed to be. And with this said, let's actually go ahead and open this tool so that you can see what it looks like once you get started with it. So the first things you would notice once you have this open is you have a big viewport, and you also have a couple of nice and interesting looking, icons. Now, if you're coming from Maya or Cinema 4D, you would notice that these things kind of look similar, but they are not. So click on the cog right here, we can make changes, and these changes will be reflected on our viewport. On the other hand, clicking here, you can also use it as your asset browser window. So you can actually change that to your asset browser, or you can leave it as just your default viewport. And of course, if you're also coming from legacy 3D tools, you possibly know or work with quad viewports, and that can be turned on right here. So if you click on that, you can have that turned on. And of course, you can also change the overall dimension of the quad view. And to each of these quad views that you have, various things actually exist independently. For example, if we throw in a simple cube, we can turn off the gizmo or the manipulator as it's called here, but it's still active on all of these other parts. Now, before we actually talk about some of this cool stuff, let's talk about navigation. So for navigation, how you navigate with this is pretty interesting. If you hold on Alt with your left mouse button, you can pan. If you hold down Control with your left mouse button, you can orbit. And of course, with your, middle mouse button, you can zoom in and zoom out. You also have a couple more things that you can use to manipulate your viewport, which includes this, which you can use to move around a particular object. And of course, you can use this to actually orbit, and these would allow you orbit the whole world, and these would allow you orbit just across the object itself. And you'd notice that we also have a view sphere down here. Over here, we also have this other one, which is more like you're zooming in and zooming out, more like what you have with your traditional ZBrush. On the other hand, if you like to lock things to a camera, you can click right here and lock this view to the camera, which is here by default. We can also unlink that, and from here, we can turn on or turn off snapping depending on what we are going for. Over here, you can switch to wireframe shaded, or your simple shaded view. And from here, you can go from perspective to orthographic in a single click. Over here, you have your properties, you have layers. From the inspector or from your scene graph is where you can turn on and turn off stuff that you don't want to see or things that you like to see within your viewport. On the other hand, if there are multiple things that exist within your viewport that you like to just simply turn off the layers for, you can do that right here. Something else which you might also have noticed is the manipulator looks a little bit different from what you have with various tools. So for this one, what we're going to do is to bring in the Albatross model, and we're going to use that to just demonstrate a few things that these offers. So one of them is going to be this. Now by default, you have your simple rotation, you have your scaling, which is pretty nice. Of course, you can also use this to skew your characters however you want, and you can use this to move this across various directions. Something else that this has, which is pretty interesting, is the flip button. So from here, you can flip your model however you want. So depending on the view that you're looking at, you can actually use this to flip the model. and this can come in handy in some cases. Now, talking about the tools that this offers tools in a very interesting mode. The first things which you would notice when you get started with working with this is once you bring in an object and you have that object selected, you do have access to all of the properties here. So by default, if you bring in a cube, you still have access to playing with the subdivision before you commit to anything. And if you'd like to effect certain changes to this, we need to double click on this tiny node, which will reveal more commands that we can select. So in this case, if we'd like to set this to subdivision, we can change this to a subdivision value, go over to the subdivision section, and change the subdivision value you like to see for your viewport and also for the rendering. If you like this to remain with the model, possibly you don't want to come back to make changes after this, you can actually go over here and change the subdivision to mesh, and this remains with it. Within the command section, there are tons of commands that you can work with, and this is also relative to the mode that you're selecting. So if you're in the mesh mode, you have various commands. If you're in the animation mode, you have different commands. Camera mode has different commands. Light mode has different commands. Faces, edges, and also vertices do have different commands. And if you're thinking about deforming this, if you go over to the mesh section, you can throw in a deformer. So this gives you about 4 to 5 deformers. We can either throw in a lattice deformer, a stretch deformer, or a tube deformer. So if we throw in the lattice deformer, we can select the kind of subdivisions that we want, and we can also select various points within the lattice that we would like to use to deform this. And of course, once you're done having the selection, you can manipulate it however you choose to get the results that you're looking for. And once you're done, you can click on OK to apply the deformation that you've just done. Within the mesh section, there are several other things that you can actually play with, which includes the Boolean. And for this one, we need to select 2 objects, and then we can apply the Boolean. And with this Boolean, you'd notice we have different operations from the A plus B to A minus B. Then we've got the B minus A, and we also have the B intersecting A. And for those that are into modeling, you can click on faces, and from faces, you will be able to make some selection. And because we have commands, we can choose the kind of command that we want. So in this case, if I'm selecting multiple stuff, let's actually go ahead and use the lasso and select stuff like so. You can choose different kinds of command that you want from here, or you can simply use the different kinds of command that you want from here. I believe with a strong community, things like this will be done with a simple right click, because in this case, we don't necessarily have all of the options. A right click would make things a bit faster, and these tools just simply doesn't offer that yet. Something it offers, which you might be pretty familiar with if you work with Blender, is now that we have this shaded, if we look around, you would notice the back isn't selected, something that I have personally battled with for years. Well, Blender simply has a workaround for that. So does this tool. So the same workaround that you have with Blender in terms of selecting back faces is exactly the same workaround that you have with this one. So if we like to make that selection with our lasso, and maybe we like the back to be included, we can also do that selection with this in wireframe, and now we would have our back included. So if we go around, you'd notice that the back is now included. There are certain things that includes flattening, merging, splitting, all of these are here. So from faces to edges, all the way to vertices, you can do all of this selection, and you have various tools that you can use to do some stuff. For animation, you can also choose to animate this object. This comes with the bone tool, a deformer, and a constraint that you can use. So for the bones, by default, you would notice that if you have an object selected, actually you would even notice it from here. Let's go over to the meshes or go over to the object. If you have any object selected, you notice that we have some things. We have the bone, we have the projectors, which actually deals with UVs. We have the morph, which I believe has to do with morphing the object itself. And we have the bounds and the vertex map. So if we double click on this, for example, we can start doing some UV based stuff. Of course, you would notice this jumps automatically to UVs, and we can start doing some UV based stuff. If we go ahead and jump all the way out and double click on bones, you will also notice that we can add armatures to our model and start animating it. So by default, once you double click on that, that attaches an armature to your model, and we can select that, move this all the way there, and we can add even more. Say for example, we would like to add more joints to this. Yes, we can. So we can go over to the add section, and I can add a nice new joint here and possibly add another one right there. If you click on automatic weight, that automatically weights that. And you can also click on auto weight with that one. You can also choose to smooth out the weights if you want. You can paint this weight. If you like to paint weight, of course, you can actually go ahead and do that. And for sure, if you're also thinking about doing the same thing for this other one. Maybe you like to paint weight, automatic weight that one, or maybe you like to smooth it, pose it, all of that. Yes, you can. And something else which we've just done is to go ahead and rotate the entire model since we did the rigging inversely. So for us to actually start animating, what we need to do is to have this selected, go over to animation, and right here within the animation layout is where we can start animating this model. And how you get to animate here is pretty interesting. As if you simply take a look at the property section, you'll notice that we've got animation, animation list, animation layers, and the kind of keyframes you like to clock in within your timeline. So if you're thinking about position, rotation, scale, or maybe you just want to do everything at once, you can actually select that too. So for this one, how we can start animating this is pretty simple. We'll go over to where we have our joints, and in this case, we're simply going to select the middle joint because I think that's more like the best one that we can use to showcase the whole deformation. Let's select rotate and rotate that. That looks pretty nice. So for you to create keyframes, I will definitely suggest that instead of clicking right here, of course, which you can do in most DCC tools, turn on auto key. So if we like to keyframe at a particular point in our timeline, we'll have to set that here. And you notice this has subframes too. So we're saying at frame 0, we'll like animation to be the way it is. Let's just make a tiny alteration to that. And if we would like to have some changes, say maybe frame 12, we can dial in frame 12 right there, make another change, go over to 24, dial in another one, and we can continue making those changes as much as we want. And once we're done, we can press the playback button, and we can also do more stuff like playing with the interpolation, checking out the graph, and making some tiny moderations here and there. Like we mentioned earlier, this comes with constraints and various attributes that you can work with. One cool feature which this also comes with is the fact that you can literally do your texture painting inside of this tool. So this is something that I think a lot of people would love, as instead of going out to another DCC tool to texture paint your model, you can create your model, texture paint it, assign that texture to a particular texture map within your material section, and you can have all of that going right here inside of Albatross 3D. And to think about it, that this tool has been created by one particular person and has taken all of these things into consideration, and even more stuff that we didn't talk about is worth commending. So for those who are thinking about exploring these, or possibly you like to support it, then you can simply go over to the link in the description and check this out. It is a free tool, has cool stuff going for it, and I believe with the right amount of support, this tool will definitely live up to its potential. So this is it. Albatross 3D is down here, and it's a free tool that you can grab right now and start creating 3D models. Tell me what you guys think about this one in the comment section. And of course, if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And until I see you guys in the next one, peace.